Robservations with Robert, Meyer, Burnett.
This next letter comes from Christopher Garland. This is a good one, sort of. Christopher Garland says, "Hello, Rob. I'm writing in response to your Robservations live chat number 130. In it, you made several points that I had some disagreement with, and I'd like the opportunity to respond to them." By the way, I love letters like this. I love when people respond to things that I've said. I mean, that's one of the things I love about this channel is having open dialogue, and especially this letter. Chris disagrees with me a lot, but he presents his thoughts in a very cogent, respectful manner, which I think should be par for the course. You imagination connoisseurs, you are members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. This, my friends, is how it's done. Christopher Garland says, "Hello, Rob. I'm writing in response to your Observations live chat 130. In it, you made several points that I had some disagreement with, and I'd like the opportunity to respond to them. Quote, I don't get why people don't like girls or women in things. I just don't get it. That's something I said. That's a straw man," says Christopher. "No one is making the argument, and you know it. It's just a way for creatives to dodge criticism. Surely by now you are savvy to this." Well, Christopher, I would say that isn't true entirely. I think there's a lot of men, especially men in the genre space, and I've seen it my whole life, that they don't like strong women. As a matter of fact, they can't even talk to women in real life. So seeing women in front and center in movies is uncomfortable for them, and they don't like it because in their real lives, in the real world, they have problems talking to women. And in the genre space, anybody who's been spending the last 40 years, like I have, going to science fiction conventions, that has been a readily apparent truism in my life. Now, I can only speak for myself, but I would say that I have seen that to be true on, let's say, more than one or more than 100 occasions. So I do think you can't tell me that no one is not making that argument. There are a lot of people, and I've seen it in my own life. As a matter of fact, they're the same as the true. There's women that for various reasons also have problems with men, and I understand that. So you can't say that I'm not savvy to it. I have seen in our space, anybody who's followed fandom for the last 10 years has watched this. I mean, it's happening from what happened to Anita Sarkeesian when she starts criticizing tropes in video games. I mean, to now, it happens. And there is a deep element of misogyny in fan circles, and there always has been. So now, is that a bad thing? I think yes. But I think it's just a function of the fact that we're not all well socialized people. And a lot of the people that, why do people, both men and women, why are you attracted to genre material? Genre material are flights of fancy, that whether it's science fiction, fantasy, horror, comic books, video games, whatever, they fuel our imaginations. And if our own lives are not carrying us to foreign lands or alien planets where I can meet a green alien space babe, which is something I've always wanted to actually have happen in my life, I watch Star Trek, and then I can see Green Orion slave women. Oh, wait, I can't. Green Orion animal women, that's what they're called now in the toys. It's all a function of that. And if it anyway, let me go on. But I feel like I should, because you're quoting me and saying something. But I do respect you for the way you have presented these ideas. I guess I wrote, I don't know if you're actually quoting me directly or paraphrasing, but you say that I said fandom was defined by old, out-of-shape dudes. Again, I'm not saying that there aren't certain creators that are paragons of physical fitness, because I've met those people. But again, a lifetime of going to science fiction conventions, literary conventions, comic book conventions, media conventions. Yes, I think that people are drawn to writing about the fantastic because the fantastic is the way they would like to believe the universe is. And that's why they're drawn to it in the first place. I know that I want to be living in a world where I can go to alien planets and meet alien people and travel through time and live on the Enterprise and fight dragons and all of those things. But I can't. I have to live my life day to day with, pending lawsuits and having to pay rent and listening to people lie about me repeatedly online. That's my reality. But you know what? When I can binge watch season 3 of Designated Survivor because some friends told me to watch it, I can get involved with idealistic people that I believe live and work in Washington, D.C., just like they did in the West Wing. But so fandom was defined by old, out of shape dudes. It was. It has been for a long time. I mean, look at the archetypes of the characters in all of genre fiction. He says, you also go on to say, yeah, because until a certain point, they were the only ones showing. Here's what he says. Yeah, because until a certain point, they were the only ones showing up. Why shouldn't they define it? Okay, you're correct about that. They should define it. For a long time, old, out of shape dudes were showing up. And you say, yeah, because until a certain point, they were the only ones showing up. Why shouldn't they define it? Well, that was true. But now all different kinds of people are showing up. Girls are showing up. Transgender people are showing up. Gay people are showing up. Religious people are showing up. Whole families are showing up. So what happens is the definition needs to change. The problem that I have is when, as you put it, the old out of shape dudes or the young out of shape dudes that only believe their fandom should be one way get angry when all kinds of different people enter the arena and want to play. Then everybody gets angry. And that's when I have the problem, because those people are just as welcome. And that's the way it should be. Then he says, I said, because no one wanted to buy sci-fi from female authors. Wrong, dude. That's just what the publishers believed. It wasn't actually true. There were plenty of female authors that were wildly successful at the time. That is true. There were. But writers like James Tiptree Jr. was a woman, and she changed her name so she could get more easily published. Science fiction for the longest time was pretty much a dudes only place to be. Did we have people like Ursula K. Le Guin? Did we have people like Margaret Atwood coming in? Octavia Butler? Yeah, we did. And traditional science fiction has been exploded by people. Charlie Jane Anders, one of my favorite writers. She's new to the scene and is writing some incredible fiction. But look at the sad and rabid puppies experience at the Hugos. We have a lot of people that want the status quo to remain the way it is. And the problem is, I always thought that being liberal and progressive meant we're just open to new ideas. But now I see that some of those things mean, or all of those things mean, you're only open to your ideas. And I think that that's the problem. So when you say that that's just what publishers believe, no, because that's all what dudes were buying. As you say on the point you're making, just up above this one, fandom was defined by old, out of shape dudes. Yeah, because until a certain point, they were the only ones showing up. And then you say, wrong, dude, that's just what the publishers believed. You can't have both be true. The publishers believed it because the only people showing up were old, out of shape white dudes. And that's changed. And I've watched it change over the last 25 years. And that's amazing. And you know what it means? It means we're just going to be getting better stories and more interesting points of view. And that's what science fiction is all about. You don't ever want science fiction to be a moribund genre that's only giving you one point of view about one thing the way you want it. I mean, the funny thing is, the thing that I have about Star Wars fandom is that while I have problems from a story standpoint, and I grew up loving Star Wars, but the people that are angry about it seem to me, for the most part, angry because they expected Star Wars to be one thing, one specific thing. Now, if you want to talk about the larger problems with Star Wars storytelling, I'm with you 100%. But when you think that Star Wars has to be defined one particular way, it has to fit in one box, I don't think that's necessarily the best thing, which brings me to your next point that I said, do you think anyone wants to make a bad Star Wars movie? Your answer is yes. And his name is Rian Johnson. He has famously said that it is his intention to make a polarizing movie that some people love and some people hate. Okay. Well, there's nothing wrong with making a polarizing movie that some people love or some people hate, but that doesn't mean it's a bad movie or it's a bad Star Wars movie. Wouldn't you rather be provocative? I would rather tell a story that somebody has a response to, good or bad, than a movie that just sits there and people go, eh. I mean, Rian Johnson was the same way that Unforgiven was a complete deconstruction and demytholization of the Western genre. That's what made it great. And when you look at Luke, the last place we would have expected him to be is a sort of an embittered old Jedi throwing his lightsaber over his shoulder. But that to me was interesting. I was like, that's cool, because I don't necessarily have a problem. I don't necessarily need Luke Skywalker to be a Jedi Knight 30 years after the last time we saw him on the movie screen. People change. That's the world. That's why I thought it was interesting. But it's no one's intention to make a bad movie. You know, the only people that say that are people that have never made movies. Everybody's trying to make the best movie they can. Movies are too long and too hard to make. And this idea that anyone ever set out to make a bad movie is wrong. It's wrong. And then I said, you say that I said, and we have Game of Thrones because of them. And then you say, but the ending was horrible and ruins the entire thing. I can't bring myself to watch the old episodes anymore because I know what it leads to, and I'm not the only one who feels that way. I will say this to you, sir. I agree 100%. I agree 100%. I think that whether you like the 8th season of Game of Thrones or not, I think you could write papers and it will be written about that the final season of Game of Thrones, I don't believe ended the stories that were being told. And I'm not just talking about the character of Daenerys or Jaime Lannister or Tyrion or whomever, whatever your Jon Snow, whatever your favorite character was. It's not just the character endings, it's the entire story. What was the point of the entire story? It was so beautifully intricate and interwoven, and there were so many points being made. And I think that the 8th season of Game of Thrones let down the entire essence of what Game of Thrones had been. I agree with you. I think that the ending of Game of Thrones was a huge letdown from an overall storytelling standpoint. I will agree with you there, 100%. But there are joys to be had in the 8th season as well. I love the first 2 episodes. I thought the first 2 episodes were great. Anyway, then I said, the mundanes are the ones that are supporting and keeping our franchises alive, not the fans. I think this was from a letter you were reading, but you did agree with it. There's a rule in business, he goes on to say, this is what he's saying. There's a rule in business from the most loyal 20% of the customer base, in this case, the fans. It's the fans, not the mundanes, who see the movies over and over again. It's the fans, not the mundanes, who buy the vast majority of merch. It's the fans, not the mundanes, who generate free publicity for the IP. This statement is just plain wrong, and it's truly unfortunate that most creatives probably believe this. Look, this channel is dedicated to the post-geek singularity. Everyone is a fan of this material. Their fandom, people love. Endgame did not gross $2.5 billion because just the fans went. The Marvel Cinematic Universe appeals to so many different kinds of people. Casual fans, diehard fans, comic book readers, non-comic book readers. And the idea of what a fan is, there's now, fans were over here and the rest of the people were over here. Now it's everybody's a fan, but it's now a spectrum of fandom. And we can't expect, some people are at the extreme end of fandom, other people are casual fans. Before, real fanatics made up a small fraction of the population, but in the post-geek singularity world, everybody's kind of a fan. It's just a question of how much of a fan that they are. And now you finally, and when you say, it's interesting because then you make these statements and then you go on and you say, this statement is just plain wrong. My statement is that the mundanes are the ones supporting and keeping the franchises alive. And you end by saying that this statement that I made is just plain wrong. And it's truly unfortunate that most creatives probably believe this. No, that's what our businesses tell us. It's demonstrably provable that the fanatics are not the people that are keeping these franchises alive. You need to get everybody to show up. Movies are very expensive. When you're making movies and television, you have to break free of the fan base. And it's interesting because certainly our diehard fans are important. I'm not saying they're not. They are. I've been a diehard Star Trek and Star Wars fan almost since their inception. But I'm going to show up anyway. I hate Star Trek Discovery. And every time I watched the episode, I wanted their episodes to be better. But by the end of the episodes and then by the end of the seasons, both of them, I felt a supreme sense of betrayal. But they're not trying to appeal to me. It's just they appealed to, in trying to appeal to a much broader fan base, they really appealed to nobody at all. There are people that like it, and I don't begrudge them. But you know what? I haven't heard anybody talk about their fervent, passionate love of Star Trek based on only Star Trek Discovery. Maybe there are those people. I'm sure I'll hear from them. I'd be curious to read a nice letter explaining to me why Star Trek Discovery means something to you that come nearly as close to as one of Willow Yang's letters do to prove why the original series is still relevant 50 plus years later. So I have to disagree with you there. Now you finally end with, also in the video, you never made any meaningful attempt to define what you thought toxic fandom was. Again, this is a loaded and divisive term commonly used by creatives to dodge criticism, and only serves to demonize fans that refuse to just shut up and take what they are given. Okay. Here's the thing, that what is toxic fandom to me is when a bunch of fans get together with one another and they're going to share their enthusiasm for, say, Star Wars. If one fan then starts telling another fan that they're wrong, starts screaming and yelling at them, making them feel bad because they don't agree with what this other fan believes. When fans are being mean and vitriolic and dismissive of other fans that have a baseline of love in the same fandom, there's a problem. There's a big problem. That's how I would define toxic fandom. Toxic fandom is when our group of fans is being mean to each other for opposing points of view. And when I say mean, I mean really, really mean. And you know, when I was growing up and going to conventions as a kid, I met lots of people, especially at more literary-minded conventions. There were talk about insufferable twats that I would meet at these conventions. I mean, people that were such dicks about their beliefs, and they had their noses so high in the air. But you know what? I never heard somebody. They would be insufferable, yes, but they would listen to you, and when they would tell you you're an idiot, they would do so in a more of an erudite way, and you could have these discussions, and you wouldn't be anonymous and just say, well, fuck you. You know, it wasn't like that. People were at those conventions. They understood that there was a baseline. I went to Norwescon, which is mostly a literary convention, to meet other people. In fact, I went to meet those people because I learned from them. You know, and I think that was important. It was important to have that. Toxic fandom now has come to the point where when we're hating, when fellow Star Trek and Star Wars fans, or MCU fans, or Harry Potter fans, or video game fans, or whatever, are going after each other on social media and tearing each other down because of how they perceive a video game or a movie or a television show to be, that's toxic. That's toxic. People are getting swatted. You know, it's crazy the way we're dealing with people now. And what's even worse, look, there's a lot of things I hated growing up, and I've been very critical over the years of people's movies. I'll give you an example. One of my favorite directors growing up was John Carpenter. When I saw Escape from LA, I hated it. Hated it. Now, I was happy it got made, but I felt bad for how much I hated the movie because I loved John Carpenter so much. Now, people are just more than happy to tell John Carpenter, fuck you. I mean, that's the difference. That's what's happened, is people will go after John Carpenter and blame him and hate him and tell him this, whatever they're going to tell him, even if they love John Carpenter, you know, and that's toxic. I felt bad because if a movie came out from a creator that I loved and I didn't like what it was, I was the one feeling bad. I wasn't trying to make them feel bad. And I think that's a huge difference. Now Christopher ends with, in the words of our overlord and savior, Dictor von Doomcock, without respect, we must reject. Well, Christopher, I would say that is a great lesson. And I like Dictor von Doomcock. But you know what? Without respect, we must reject should apply to fandom as a whole, not just to our franchises that we love. We should apply that to each other. Anyway, just what I'm thinking, just what I think is problematic. But, I did like this letter, and I want to say, Christopher, that I like that you called me on these things, and I like that you make me define what I think toxic fandom is. In my mind, this is exactly the kind of letter that I want to get here. If you want to be, I thought you were respectful. I thought you had good questions. I thought you're making me define what I meant. And I think that's cool. I think that's exactly what should be going on here. And I welcome you to send me a letter and participate in the Post-Geek Singularity community, and come back anytime. Keep writing letters, keep watching, and I appreciate very much hearing from you. So thank you for that.